Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new year of Bobble Pod. So, welcome to the year 2023. We want to first of all start by thanking everyone who's been listening across our last 3 seasons as we go into season 4 of Bobble Pod. I personally can't believe that we're on season 4 and we've kept going for this long. I think a lot of the credit goes to Josh and Callum for sticking with it more than anything else. So happy new year to everyone who's listening out there. We're starting with a brand new season 4. We will be recording every 2 weeks now instead of every month, which the benefit to you, the listener, will be that we'll be able to bring you more up-to-date trending news and thoughts and education pieces around digital marketing and what's going on, not just in the world of Bobble, but in the world of digital marketing and also some wider topics of what's going on in the world. But as always, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hello YouTube as always. And don't forget to click on the subscribe button. We actually had, if you're watching on YouTube, a little sign at the back. Maybe I'll get Josh to do an edit that said, don't forget to subscribe on a board. Some of you watching YouTube will realize we've actually changed our location. We've moved into the office just to accommodate the frequency of recordings. So anyone who's listening, you can tell this is like an actual, not, off the hook podcast, a lot of planning and thought goes into it. So on today's episode, starting with season 4, I'm going to talk about the truth about Dubai. And you might think, what's Dubai got to do with marketing? Well, back in 2nd December 2022, I took a trip to Dubai for 2.5 weeks. Some of you that follow me on LinkedIn would have seen that I was posting whilst I was in Dubai of all the meetings and catch-ups I'm having with individuals, businesses and partners and suppliers whilst I was out there. Let's be honest, it was part of a business/personal holiday, if I'm really honest with you. So those that follow me on TikTok or follow me on Instagram would have seen that I was having some fun in the desert, as we all do. But it allowed me to realize the difference between the UK and the West and the Middle East and like places like the UAE in terms of how the digital world kind of works. And we got some myth busters as well, generally, because before I even went to Dubai, a few of my close friends, family, people said, oh, you got to be careful. You got to watch yourself. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I feel like there was a stigma when I got there about it that wasn't true. It was my first time in Dubai. I'd never been before. The reason for me to go to Dubai in particular was because we're in a recession. I've highlighted this in a number of my podcasts before in terms of what you can do to avoid a recession. We as an agency, as a business, are looking at markets that are essentially recession proof. And not to say that Dubai is recession proof, but a lot of the data, a lot of the noise, a lot of the publications, the insights show that Dubai is less likely to be impacted by the recession. And if it does, it'll be the last country to be hit by it. No country in the world is going to escape increase in interest rates. And that's the same in Dubai from the contacts and people I was speaking to out there. But from some of the contacts I was speaking out there is, I believe the royal family came out and made a statement in terms of the concessions they have in place to protect them against the recession. So essentially making them recession proof. And that's a big thing because the contact I was speaking to out there works in real estate was like, that's a big statement for the royal family to put their backing behind making that statement very, very publicly. And that was a few months ago. So in mid 2022, I was looking at countries and places around the world, which I would say are less impacted by the recession, looking at markets we could grow into, companies we could target out there or companies we could target here but supply out in other areas of the world. And along with Dubai, I came up with like Singapore, Mumbai, surprisingly Rio, places like Atlanta in America. And my research highlighted a number of areas, not just one, but Dubai seemed the most logical and best place to go, mainly because I looked at my LinkedIn, I looked at the contacts I had, I looked at my friends and circle that were out there, and I felt like it was a market which I could get into easier than anywhere else. So that was the reason behind going to Dubai. And fun fact is, as soon as I landed there, I ended up getting food poisoning from the flight, and I arrived at, I think it was 1 a.m. By 3 a.m. we were in the resort. By 5:30, that's it. Gastroenteritis, everything opened up. Not to be too graphic. Callum's wincing over there. And by 10:30, believe it or not, I had a doctor and a nurse in my resort room while I was in bed, hooked up to an IV and treating me because of the loss of fluids, treating me with antibiotics, anti-sickness, and all that kind of stuff. And it was interesting because while I was in the UK, there was a lot of strikes going on. And obviously, everyone knows I'm a big supporter of the NHS because everything I've been through with my kidneys and my medical history. I was quite surprised of how easy and quick treatment was. And it made me reflect that actually I'd been in Dubai for 8 hours. And within 8 hours of arriving, getting through the airport, getting into resort, checking in, going to sleep, waking up and feeling ill, and within 2 hours of calling up the front desk and the support I got was completely different. Yes, it's not public health in Dubai. It's private. That's why I highly encourage anyone who's going to travel to get travel insurance and medical travel insurance and drive planning, because trust me, it comes in handy like it did with me. So it just kind of showed the differentiations of how quick it was. And I'm not an advocate of private health. However, what I found was like something like that I did not need to go to hospital for. It was just, you could tell it was a stomach infection. However, I would have had to see a local GP here. Had I been treated in the UK, it would have taken me at least a week, if not more, to recover. I was better by the next day. I had 2 lots of IV treatments, one in the morning when they came in and checked me out, went away, kept the IV in my wrist, came back, connected me up again, same solution. By Sunday, I was up and about. Wasn't fit enough to do a lot, wasn't really eating for like 2-3 days properly. It wasn't until like Wednesday where I felt like my system was back to normal, because these things take time. But it just goes to show, like, you know, what really struck me, and the reason I mention all this is how actually advanced Dubai and the UAE was compared to the UK. It was actually quite surprising for me, because I'd had, and this is why it's called the truth about Dubai, because I had all this stigma around, well, actually, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't drink, not that I drink it anyway, but, you know, people can't show any kind of public shows infection. As I was going, the World Cup had kicked off, and obviously that was happening in a neighboring country, in Qatar, and then there was obviously a lot of news portrayed by the media in terms of how Qatar is, and then the spotlight was on them around elements, but there's a lot of things that were highlighting me. And I got a list here. So first, it was like, there was no security concerns whatsoever. The first being that a lot of people tell me, oh, you got to be careful. The police out there are very hard. If they see you do something, they're going to crack down. I did not see one police officer in the 2.5 weeks I was in Dubai. I saw police cars, but only at traffic incidents. You've got security personnel at key restaurants and bars and places around, which is fine, but the only time I saw the Dubai police was at the airport, going through security check-in, and that was it. That stigma around the dress code, drinking, eating is all BS. Everywhere I went, the resort, there was people with alcohol, people on the beaches, dressed as they wanted to. And another thing about the security concern I'll say is that, and I don't want to get targeted by this, but the truth is where we were in the resort, we were on the Palm, and even in the evenings and early mornings when it was quite dark, you could see women running and training and jogging across the Palm, which seemed like a fun thing to do, but by themselves, and they weren't worried and they weren't concerned about it at all. And that kind of goes to show how security in a place there was no risk of that. And that's different to if you were to run at night here, or early in the morning or late at night at, you know, for example, in Leeds or London, where, you know, there's a lot of knife crime, etc. And there is that, well, I don't want to say the word stigma, but there is that issue of, you know, well-being and safety concerns for, you know, for females. The whole place was like clean and tidy and renewable energy everywhere. So on the Palm, there were lights around every single palm tree on the edge. And part of me was thinking, why isn't that a waste of energy? But actually it wasn't. It was all powered by solar panels that were on the floor that were absorbed by the heat, which was actually very, very, very smart. Even the parking meters and everything was powered by the solar panels. And you could see how renewable they are and forward thinking they were. Everyone was polite, welcoming. I spoke to locals that had not just come from Dubai, but they had come from all parts of Africa, wider Asia, India. And I was asking them, why are you here? What drove you to come to Dubai? And the same thing came again and again, was like the income. They make more money here than they do back at home. And it's a better standard of living. And the reason I mention all these things is you're eating out, the cost of living there is the same. So I know when you see stuff about Dubai, you see people at 5 Palm Atlantis on the Palm Marina and they're drinking big, expensive bottles of champagne. That's like the small contingent here in the UK. If you go to London, you go to Mayfair, you will see people party and spend a lot of money. Even in parts of Leeds, you can see people party and spend a lot of money. And if you go on social media, that's all you're going to see. People showing the high life. But 99% of the population in the UAE do not do that. There's a whole area about, people that come from India and the markets there, near the supermarkets. That was crazy. My friends that were out there that were living much further out from Dubai in actually gated communities told me that all they like to do is what we do here in the UK. As soon as they get home, is go home and catch up on the next series of like Wednesday or Netflix, or watch TV and just relax, or spend time with their family, or plan to do things. So it's just normal living. The only killer benefit is obviously you keep all the income that you would have had elsewhere. So with those like gated communities, it was just similar to what we had here in terms of like you'd want to go home or want to relax. But what I saw out there from a digital marketing perspective was such innovation in terms of how they did things. The billboards were the biggest I've seen ever. There's a main road that goes all the way down Dubai, from the marina to where the Burj Al Arab is, to the business town, all the way down to Old Dubai and Dubai Creek. And across it, you just see the biggest billboards, probably, I don't know how to explain it, but as long as Westfield shopping centre down in London in terms of length of that. I was actually surprised how big these billboards were. Digital screens everywhere. Everything was on mobile phone. I could get anything delivered to myself in terms of not just medication, but shopping, food, anything. The amount of apps out there. Driving's intense. They follow usual guidelines, but people don't use indicators, and that's kind of frustrating at times and scary, especially when you're doing 140 kilometers per hour going to Abu Dhabi. But all in all, there was a lot of misconception that was given to me before I went out there. And the benefit of being out there is I met a lot of businesses who explained how businesses worked out there, how people is. And whilst there was a lot of turmoil going on here in the UK, and I'm going to talk about turmoil because it was very eye-opening. Whilst I was out there, I was still getting the BBC News notifications and notifications on Twitter and everything that was going on here in the UK, because obviously I was still on my mobile phone. And you could hear like rail strikes, teacher strikes, raw mail strikes now going on. A lot of areas really fallen. And it kind of goes to show, because there was a lot of heat from the UK media about the whole World Cup in Qatar in terms of like their human rights and their laws and legislations. But what it made me really think about is actually when I was in Dubai, again, completely part of the UAE, completely different country to Qatar, much more forward thinking. And the rest of the countries around there are kind of following Dubai's lead when it comes to that. The issue came down is it was just a hypocrisy. What I found, I had watched a clip on TikTok about the LBC network here in the UK, and a guy had called up, and I remember being angry and frustrated and annoyed for the rest of the day because I was seeing two different parts of the world at that point. I was in a place in the world where strikes weren't happening. Everything was clean and tidy. I could get everything. Everything was plentiful. It wasn't expensive as people made it out to be. I was actually enjoying it. The weather was good. The customer service was good. There was no complaints whatsoever. And then back in the UK, there's a guy calling in on the LBC network complaining how he's got the winter flu. He's unwell. He's struggling to get any support from the local food bank, or his local council. And he was crying whilst calling into the LBC network, saying that he thinks he's going to die in his house whilst he was there in the UK. And obviously the person on the LBC network was obviously, you could see the reaction of him. He was also drawn to tears. And I was like, That is a death that should be preventable. But had he probably not called into that network, nobody would have known. And it kind of goes to show, and what it brought into perspective is like, whilst we as a country, and everyone knows I'm a proud Yorkshireman, I'm proud that my parents came here and built a lifestyle for me here is, but whether you want to admit or not, this country, the United Kingdom, from an economical point of view, from a business opportunity point of view, is in free fall. It's collapsing and we can see it. And if you don't believe it, can't get a GP appointment, can't get a bus because everyone's on strike. Teachers, in my opinion, are inadequate and don't provide the right level of education. But again, it's a personal opinion and they're going on strike. The people that actually deserve to be on strike are nurses who kept this country going and kept so many millions of people's alive during COVID, during the pandemic. And yet we can scrap the amount of billions that was taken from bounce back loan fraud, but can't find the money to, fund nurses. It's ridiculous. You can't get on a train in hopes that it's going to strike, which is impacting people's work. Buying fuel for your car is stupidly expensive. You can't heat your homes. You can't pay for electricity. Amount of potholes in Leeds, yet the council rates are going through the roof is unbelievable. I mean, the list is endless. And when I compared the state of that in terms of what's going on in the UK, in terms of what I was seeing in Dubai, and not just in the main areas like, the business areas, the Palm or the Marina, I was going out to where businesses were in the free zones and further out. I was thinking, well, who are we to criticize? Okay, their laws might be a bit different, but Dubai I thought was much more forward and modern than anything I've seen here in the United Kingdom. And as a result, we're opening a virtual office in Dubai because I liked it. I liked the business opportunities. People weren't talking about Meghan and Harry while they're out there, and there were a lot of Brits and expats that are out in Dubai. And people just weren't talking about the issues and what you see on the news just today, which is completely depressing. And I feel for so many people in the UK. It's like anytime you turn on the news, there's no good news. In Dubai, there's a museum of the future. It was incredible. It was there planning out the next 20 years of Dubai, how they're going to increase the population from 13 million in the UAE up to 25 million, how they're going to attract business and people to come in and work. We don't have anything like that in the UK. There's no plan, there's no direction in which this country is going. And you can blame the government for that. You can blame Brexit, you can blame pandemic. It doesn't really matter what you blame. But the reality is, it comes down to, and I've said this a few times before, is the incompetence of government and leaders. There's no direction. If someone told me where is the United Kingdom going, is it going to be at the forefront of science and research? Is it going to be forefront of digital and tech and communication? Is it going to be the forefront of renewable energy? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know that in Leeds, we're a good digital tech hub, which is a great place to be. But beyond that, I look at other places and I encourage people to go out and travel. Go out and travel if you're a business owner and have a look at other places and other ways they're doing business around the world. And what I found was in Dubai, I actually really liked it. I thought it was fantastic in terms of how they do business, because that's all they talk about. If you're going out and meeting someone, they have a casual catch up, but it's like, oh, here's what I'm doing. And then the other conversation is like, well, here's someone I know that can help you with that. Or here's how I can help you. Or actually, could you help me with that specific element? It's not everyone's out to get everyone. What's in it for me? That selfish, I'd say, mindset that really exists here in the UK. What's in it for me? Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. And I'm someone who builds relationships up by, building a relationship, getting to know someone and how it is. As an agency, we give so many referrals out to our suppliers and partners. It's ridiculous. Josh, who's behind the camera, doesn't know this yet, but he's going to get a referral to a client that we onboarded later today. But that's just how business works, and it's vice versa. And some people do embody that as business owners. Some people do embody that as senior leaders. But the truth is, we need to take a hard, good look at ourselves as a country, because I feel like as owners, directors, we're the ones that have to provide a direction. I provide a direction for where Bobble's going to my team. And that was really shown out when I came back from Dubai in terms of our Bobble Insights platform and what it means. And the training we did around that, the feedback from the team was fantastic. So we as a company have shown our team and our employees a direction. This is how we're going forward. This is how we're going to open up in new markets. This is where Bobble could be in the next 3 to 5 years. What does the plan look like? And the only reason why I'm now thinking of other markets outside the UK is because I just don't see any direction here. It sounds depressing of a note to end on, but I just don't see any direction in terms of where this country is going apart from freefall. We're more bothered about people's feelings than facts and actual, science. And you see it, and it's plagued across TikTok. I found it revolutionary being in Dubai, not having to talk about any political or political movements or anything. No, it was nothing like that. For once, I felt like my mind was shut off and I was able to think about business for the first time. I'm business only and actually enjoy myself. And that's why I focus this podcast about the truth about Dubai, because it's not all what you see, people partying up at rooftops and stuff like that. That's the 0.01% that showed that, really. What I saw was completely different. I saw a really, booming economy, a country that has clearly got a clear direction in terms of where they're heading. And when you look at how far they've come in the last 34 years, and I compare that to the UK, and I expect where they're going to be in the next 30 to 40 years, the question is, do I want to be there where there's a lot of growth and opportunity, which ultimately means the company makes more money, gets more opportunity, which means our staff get paid better and get better benefits. It all trickles down. Whereas right now I'm being told that I've got to continue paying more in tax. And I'm like, well, actually, I'd rather reinvest that into my team and pay better wages. But that's just one person's opinion. Not to end on a bad note, but honestly, I might have gone a little bit off one of the elements I kind of wanted to talk about. But if you're a business owner and you're struggling and we're in an economic crisis, although the positive news is that inflation has come down from 9.1 down to 7.1%, which is positive, and it can only hopefully get better. And some of the publications that I'm reading financially are very, very clear on what's going on in terms of hopefully we've hit the peak worst element of it. Fingers crossed, but the recovery is going to be very, very long and slow. I would encourage you to start looking at other markets and start looking at other areas where your services. The one thing that benefits Bobble is we're digital. We can literally do our work anywhere. All I need is this laptop and access to Google, Meta, LinkedIn platforms, and my email. And all I need for that is internet and Wi-Fi access. And most of our calls are done via Zoom or Teams. So look at elements like automation, which we'll discuss in our next podcast. Look at how you can improve things and look at how you can take your model to other markets. And that's what Dubai was about. That's why I was there. I was like, the UK, I don't see much opportunities. Where can I find opportunities? So I took that leap of faith. I put that investment in. I went out there, and fingers crossed by the end of this week, we should be able to announce a new client in Dubai. So it would have paid dividends. If you don't put yourself out there, if you don't take risks, you don't go out, explore and do a bit of research, you're not going to see the potential opportunities that are available and afforded to you. So if you haven't been to Dubai, and don't worry, I'm not getting paid to say this or talk about this, I'd highly recommend you go, especially if you're director of business. Look at the opportunities that are afforded out there. Speak to people at the Department of International Trade, like we are speaking to, and look at other areas outside the UK if you're struggling to find business here. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. I hope that's been useful and insightful. We've got a lot of guests lined up for Bobble Pod, all the way up until May recordings, actually. We've got nearly the first half of the year covered in terms of guests on the podcast, which can provide a lot of insightful, informational, educational content. And as always, we welcome any feedback on the podcast. Don't forget to use the hashtags Mr. Bobble, Ask Bobble, or hashtag BobblePod. We're revamping our website as well, www.bobblepod.co.uk. So to take a visit to that if you want to look at historical podcasts. And as always, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to catch you on the next episode.